Hello and welcome to Upstage Downstage.
With me, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And me, Stephen Rees, seated in a cheap seat. This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen, things we've liked and may not have liked, giving our complete unprofessional and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew, take a seat and let's raise that curtain.
On today's edition of the Theatre Podcast, we have a special episode where I shall be interviewing Richard as he discusses his recent trip to the West End, covering 5 shows in 1 week. Richard, you must be mad, if not knackered.
Well, just a little bit. I never get tired. Hear my take on some of the current big and small productions, such as Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Bonnie and Clyde, Dear Evan Hansen, Cabaret, and finally Anne Juliet.
So, with all that said, I think it's time to
set the scene.
Right, moving on to our your second production. I was not involved in any of these.
Certainly wasn't.
So now I think we shall go to this one.
Dear Evan Hansen. Okay.
So, Richard, set the scene on this one.
Well,
what is it, Dear
Evan Hansen?
Dear Evan Hansen. What is it about?
Well, Dear Evan Hansen, as said on the website, is the most vital and important musical of a generation, with a raw, relevant and exhilarating score. It's written by the songwriters of The Greatest Showman and La La Land. It's a timely and timeless new musical about struggling to connect in a hyper-connected world. So basically, this production is about what can happen in youth when you maybe tell a few white lies to soften the blow or try and sort a situation out over somebody's losing their life.
Okay.
So basically, Evan Hansen is somebody who doesn't connect with friends. He hasn't got a lot of friends, and basically he befriends somebody who the day after they take their own life.
Oh.
And that's how the production starts. You start to you sort of see a little bit more about that. However,
so the suicide is a catalyst.
Suicide is the
events.
catalyst to the rest of the events of the production. So what happens is the Dear Evan Hansen part is there's a letter written to himself. He's had therapy where he's told to write a letter to himself to talk about and explore his issues. However, this letter is found on a photocopier by the guy who kills himself, and that is found on him as his final letter when he's committed suicide. So the confusion ensues by the letter. They think that he was writing to Evan Hansen because it says Dear Evan Hansen.
I'm not going to lie.
It's confusing.
I am already confused,
Yes.
And I am baffled here.
However, so moving on from that.
Yeah, set the scene.
Evan Hansen then Evan Hansen befriends the family of that boy that kills himself, and then he makes little white lies to comfort them and to basically fill in the gaps where he shouldn't have done.
Right.
And that's where the rest of the production goes, because it's all about the decisions he makes and what happens from that. So
okay.
So setting the scene.
So with all that said,
yeah.
Go on then. Tell us about the set.
So the actual set we're presented with a bedroom
Oh, incidentally,
scene.
but sorry, where did you actually see this?
Sorry, right, okay. So I saw this at the Noel Coward Theatre,
Okay.
which has been one on my list to actually go and visit, just because I'm a bit of a theatre geek, so I like to go and see all the different theatres.
Right, enough of the waffling. What about the set?
The set is basically quite technical, actually. There's a lot of projections, a lot of video screens, but you're presented with a bedroom scene on a movable plinth in the middle of the actual stage. The band were actually above the action, so they're actually off on stage right at the top, like built up on a platform, because this is a musical. But
do they have a habit of putting bands up on the...
I think it's because there's not a lot of wing space sometimes in these older theatres, so they have to put them somewhere. But no, and I think they sort of wanted to move away from having people in pits, so they're putting them visually so you can see them.
They've closed up the pits, have they?
Yeah, they've closed up the pits, unfortunately. So basically, what you're seeing on the projections and on the screens and on the sort of sides of the stage are social media posts, things that just to take you to that land where youth of today are always using social media and believing almost what's written rather than actually what the truth is. So that's what this is to sort of emulate, and this is where the production goes and the things that are the way it's actually perceived.
And what about the direction? Was it well directed?
Yes.
I mean, who directed it?
So it's directed by Michael Grief, and the book writer was Stephen Levinson, and the music and lyrics were by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul. So I thought it was directed really well. I mean, it's been running for quite a long time, so there's probably a textbook direction of how it's done now, because new cast members must be brought on by old cast members. It's been running for quite a few years, but it's always been on my list to actually see, just because of it being written by the people that wrote The Greatest Showman and other productions. So I was just intrigued, really. I didn't really know the music until I'd been to see it, and you know what, I actually enjoyed it. I didn't even know what the actual subject matter was going to be, so I was pleasantly surprised. And the cast were great. I mean, it's actually quite a small cast that do it. There's 8 cast members in the production, and they have to be very versatile. There was a lot of scenes, so there was a lot of scene changes, and the scene changes was done by almost platforms for every scene, where they swung in different pieces of staging with a bed on it, or a settee on it, or a kitchen table. They were all on it almost felt like they were all on movable platforms that just swung in and out, and also used the screens and the things above with all the projections on. They swung past and wiped the stage while something else came out and something else disappeared, and the cast members were doing all the scene changes as well. They would take in props and set off at all times. So this wasn't a bare stage production, but it was the projections gave you the
Was
backdrops.
it a clean stage
Yes.
production?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on and off?
Yeah, it was on and off, but they were using projections as the backdrops, and the projections changed, and so it was quite a fast-paced piece of production.
And it was a new piece of writing.
It was. I mean,
Even though it's been on a
it was.
while.
It was based on a book.
I'm guessing with the apps and the internet and the projections of phones and messages and stuff, that it is quite a contemporary new play.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's been out for quite a while.
But still, if it's a new play, then what do you think about the writing?
I think writing-wise, it was quite a...
Well, the overall structure and the style and the characters, did everything make sense?
Yeah, it did make sense, and it kept the pace with a social media world that we're in, as in it explored all those things where it is fast-paced. It does get confusing. So when I was explaining at the start how the production plays out, it is very confusing because it's so fast, and it's like one little change can do so many things, and because of social media, what that then creates from that, it's like it creates confusion for them on stage. It's like basically what happened is the confusion got bigger and bigger and bigger, where they ended up creating a foundation and a charity for this boy that had committed suicide, because him and Evan Hansen were best friends. Now, they'd only encountered each other once, but this changed from that to then him doing public speaking events and speaking about his friendship because they fabricated stories and fake emails and things about their life, and they filled all the gaps in, and they had a big long friendships, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger until he ended up seeing the light, apologising to the family, apologising to his own mum, and yeah, so there was a lot of things that happened. There was a retrospect and a realisation of what he's done and why he shouldn't have done it, and at the end it ends very calmly and clearly that he's made a mistake, and it was a very big mistake. However, he was lost in that confusion and that world, that he kept it going, and friends around him helped him keep it going, and it's what can happen with social media, where... So
lessons were learned at the end of it.
50, 60,000, 50 million people can see it on social media and believe it because it's the written word. And that's the exploration of the writing, and I thought it was written really well, and it's still very relevant.
It sounds like
now.
a really good concept.
Yes,
actually,
it is.
Throwing questions into the air as to is it a good idea to put all your life and stuff
and
on
it is,
social
and
media?
it's based on an American. It's American. So there's a lot of American accents. The American accents were amazing. I would say that the cast were brilliant in that way. But showed you how you see these things on telly where people set up foundations or they set up charities. How much do we believe? Are they real? You know, this showed that just from one idea or three mates at school, they came up with so much rubbish and backstory and created something where they almost had to go along with the ride because they'd already created it and they couldn't see a way out. And that's how interesting the writing is and the concept of this production is. And the music goes along well with it, and there's some really poignant songs in it where they're questioning things, and a lot of songs in this production are used for people to do auditions with because they're really heartfelt, so they're really well written. And I do think the music helped move the production on. So
it sounds like a really good thought-provoking play.
Yeah.
Quite powerful as well. I don't know anything about it, but
No.
I like any play that makes me question life.
Yes,
and to
definitely.
question everything you read, question it.
Yeah.
Because even in today's society, people just fly off the handle over anything that's been printed.
Exactly.
It's like, well, have you done the research? Have you understood the concept?
Yeah.
Have you understood?
Have you still sat back and actually?
Have you actually
thought about what you're reading?
Heard it from the horse's mouth,
Yeah,
or are
exactly.
you just taking someone's spin on it and just creating your own little?
And that's
aggro
very much about what this was, you know.
Yeah,
so,
and I've certainly learned a lot as to just not believe everything. Even when you say about people creating accounts for charities, it's like I'm a charitable person, but then I have to be careful as to which.
But is that money paying somebody's wages, or is it actually going to the charity?
Yeah, because I don't believe a lot of it is these days now. To be honest,
So
I think there's a lot of fraud and malpractice going on.
And I just think it's very relevant,
throughout everything. To be fair,
I think it's one of those productions that's been on for a long time, and its subject matter is, it goes across a lot of things when you sit back and actually look at it and analyse it.
Now, as for the technical aspect, like the sound and the lights and sounding of the lights, did I just say that?
Sound of the lights.
And the lights. I mean, it is a musical.
Yeah, I mean,
singing lights,
the band and the music was great. Yeah. There was no missed cues. I mean, one thing I will say is Evan Hansen was actually the understudy in the production that I saw, and he was brilliant. He was just as on the ball as the main lead actor would have been.
Were they from Hansen? The Mbop kids?
No.
Are they not them at all?
No, it's not those ones. They've not all got long blonde hair. But also, technically, because it was heavily reliant on projections and lighting and sound, and there was some really clever moments where...
Were they relying too much on gimmicks?
Well, no, I don't think... In this they weren't, because there were some clever moments where they did some live YouTube link send-outs to talk to their followers of the foundation and things like that, and they were using live video links on stage. So they filmed the cast member while he was talking to us, was coming up on the projections at the same time in all the little windows of the social media posts. He was there talking, and then there was another moment where one of the other cast members had a laptop open and was doing the same, and it was the live video from that camera was coming up onto the stage. So they'd done some
faking it.
No faking it, and obviously because you got the understudy. If that was all pre-recorded, it could have been the other person. And there was loads of... They've obviously thought so much that if it was an understudy or if it was another Evan Hansen, it wasn't reliant on that video. But there was other bits where the Evan Hansen would deliver a speech, and they'd pre-recorded that with the person on stage doing the speech again. So everything was done really slickly and smoothly, and I thought, it was great.
Oh. Did anything go wrong?
No, I didn't see anything go wrong this time, and
this time.
No, as in, I didn't see anything go wrong in this production. To be fair, there was nothing out of place. There was nothing sort of left. It was quite. When I say clean stage, it was very. Everything stayed on those sort of pods that were brought out with the stage.
I'd normally bring up the costume as well, but I suppose with it being contemporary,
it was there wasn't really anything I could say that it was of its time. It was very modern day current American apparel sort of production. So it sort of worked. There's not really anything stand out.
So ratings 1 to 10.
I'll give this an 8 out of 10.
Would you see it again?
I'd see it again, purely because of what I saw, and there's a lot to take in.
Is it because of the speed that
It's
you just
just
wasn't...
there's so much happening at once, and I think that may be why I've given it an 8 out of 10, just because there's so much to take in. But I really enjoyed it. Music's great. There was maybe a couple of times when I felt like there was a bit of repetition on the music, where some of the songs were very similar. So it was hard to distinguish between whether there was like a new song or was that a retrospective sort of song, or
Not a reprise.
it was, but there was not a lot of reprieves in there when you look at the actual track list, and it felt like some of the songs maybe have written in the same style, whereas there was no difference in certain ones. But overall, as a production and a piece, I really enjoyed it.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck, tumbleweed, an audible shrug of the shoulders, a slow clap, a pleasant applause, or a standing ovation. What will it be?
I'm going to give it a pleasant applause.
I'm not going to give it anything because I've never seen it. But do you think I should go and see it?
I definitely think you should see it, because I think you'd really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think I might. I looking at the outside of it, I probably wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been on my hit list.
And that's why I went to see it, because it wouldn't normally have been on my
might have
hit
just
list.
flew under the radar. But now you've talked about it, I'm intrigued, to say the least. So yeah, I'd definitely go and see this again. You know?
Would you?
No, because I've not seen it the first time round, Richard. Don't you listen?
Well, I'll go and see it again anyway.
So there we are. That's our discussion of A Week in the West End, where Richard Platt takes on 5 of the top shows. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Coming up over the next few episodes, we will be discussing A Week in the West End, where Richard Platt takes on 5 of the top shows.
And the new musical, Identical.
That's it for this week, folks.
If you'd like to drop us a message, please email us at upstagedowstagepod@gmail.com. Remember, you can always join in the chat to share with us your views on a production.
Also, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.